glad to, we're running low on the season. We've just got a few more weeks of trust talks to go. So glad to have a huge turnout here tonight. This is fantastic. I have a prop. This too could belong to you. This is a hat that says Team H2O, which is a program you may not know is going on here on Spring Island. We have a water quality monitoring effort that goes on that is done by volunteers who are all Spring Island members. This is every 2 weeks, get together and go to the front docks, and there's also some other components that can go beyond that, including getting some samples around. But this is a program that's a collaboration with USCB and the Port Royal Sound Foundation at the Maritime Center. This is getting critical data for what's going on in the Port Royal Sound, and we want to support an effort like that anyway, but if we're also going to get local data about what's happening in the creeks right off of Spring Island, even better. And so we would love your help, and there is, you can just reach out to me directly if you'd be interested in being part of this effort. And it's something that goes on throughout the year. We'd love to have folks, especially that are here in the summer, to help us out. But it's a great program. It's been going multiple years. We just need to get some extra folks that are available for it. A couple other things going on. Some of you may have heard about a bald eagle incident over the weekend, over the Easter weekend. There was an eagle found that was unable to fly or not to have sustained flight, and we connected several members with the All-in-Daw folks, the Center for the Birds of Prey, who were here last week already giving a talk. Along with the local volunteer, they were able to catch the bird and transport it to All-in-Daw. I do not have an update on its full status, but I know it was shown with elevated lead in its blood system. I've been here 4 years. We've had 4 either injured or dead bald eagles since I've been here. So we're having a bird a year impacted. This is not the birds being shot. This is the birds consuming something that has lead, and it's probably not one exposure, it's multiple exposures. So they're eating a rat that's been shot and thrown in the marsh, or in our case, they may be flying to Hickory Hill landfill or the other landfill nearby where they're scavenging on other things where somebody didn't like an armadillo and disposed of it, didn't like an opossum, or they may have just thrown it on a roadside somewhere nearby. It's not pointing the finger at Spring Island, but it's really important that we're not part of the problem. So it's critical that any animal that has lead shot in it is buried, or better yet, put in a trash bag and disposed of. We'll send a note out to the membership about this separately, because I've reached you, but I want to reach the whole island about this. So it's too bad of a situation, but hopefully we can get this tackled, and it may require education beyond just Spring Island. So that's a downer. How about an upper? Anybody want to walk the Gillespie Trail? You can. It's done. We appreciate your patience. The trail's been closed for quite a while. Not only did we have Hurricane Helene damage, but we had just degrading boardwalks from the conditions that they impact all our houses already. High humidity, high heat, salt spray, all those things, and then falling trees throughout the year. So we had about 8 boardwalks that needed work, and once they got started, they required major work. But there's a little bit of tweaking to be done on a couple, but they're not on the main Gillespie. They're on the next set of boardwalks to the northwest. But please have at it. We will have the first official event, which will be the Trailblazers Walk with Sloan in May. But head on out there, and I will also get the word out to the community about this tomorrow alongside the Eagle News. But yeah, so a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Okay. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce the first of the speakers tonight, who will in turn introduce our other speakers. So I'm here to introduce Spring Island member Rob McLane. Rob and his wife Gracia have been members on Spring Island for 5 years. And Rob's been coming to this area for much of his life because of the connection with Good Hope Plantation. He's currently the president of the organization that oversees it, and has played a major role there. And part of the work that's gone on at Good Hope has been a collaboration with Spring Island and Spring Island Trust. So they have a large membership, some of whom don't have as local of connections, and Chris Marsh and other members of the trust have worked with their people to teach them about the value and the land conservation here in the Low Country, something I hope we can continue doing. Rob's also been a great partner in conservation, working directly with Ridgeland Town Council members and others when the Ticton Hall proposal was up, and making other personal contacts as a major landowner to talk about the future of this really important part of the U-Haul corridor. I've been out on the spot we're talking about tonight. There's some great birds that are tough to get in our region that are on their property because they do a great job of managing them. And there's a whole lot to share, so let's start by welcoming Rob McLane.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Michael Garcia, for giving us a slot here. He and I have been working on this for about a year. We were hoping to do it this past fall. Circumstances changed, and so we're delighted to do it now. So thank you all for coming tonight. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces to come and hear about this. So this is exciting for me. As Andy said, I've been a member here for 5 years. And it just fits so naturally with my connection with the Low Country. And so it's very special to be here and talk about one of my great passions, which is preserving our family's property in Ridgeland. My great-grandfather, Herbert Lee Pratt, bought Good Hope in 1910 from a New Yorker named Harry Holland. And so this year we're celebrating our 116th year of continuous ownership by one family. I first came to Good Hope with my own family, my parents, in the 60s. So it's deeply embedded in my DNA. I learned how to ride a horse, I learned how to handle a shotgun, I learned about the natural beauty of the land. I joined the board of Good Hope Corporation in 2007 as its treasurer, and then I succeeded my aunt as the president of the corporation in 2013. One of the things that struck me when I first joined the board, and those of you that know me know that I don't take no for an answer, and I like to challenge things to understand why they work a certain way. So when I joined the board, I was asking, why do we do a certain thing this way? Or have we considered doing things a different way? And I always got the same answer, because that's the way we've always done it. Well, as you'll hear tonight, that phrase doesn't exist in our world anymore. When you have a family-owned enterprise, if you fail to innovate and change, it's likely you will die. So, let me tell you a bit about how this transformation got started. It began in 2017 with the hiring of Duncan Hunt, our general manager. Duncan came to us from Cherokee Plantation, where he spent 15 years. At Cherokee, Duncan was the hunt master responsible for all aspects of wildlife management, hunting, agriculture, and timber management. Since his arrival at Good Hope, Duncan has implemented many process improvements, hired key employees, and generated new sources of revenue. This transformation accelerated in 2020 with the hiring of Travis Galhouse as our dog man and lead huntsman. Travis came to Good Hope with over 20 years in both habitat management and world-class dog and horse training. As a trainer, he achieved over 80 championships, including 12 national champions. His previous experience also included the management of a Georgia plantation and as a forestry consultant. In 2021, Travis gave a presentation to the board to also assume the forestry responsibilities, and he boldly outlined a plan to increase both the acreage dedicated to recreation and hunting and increase the acreage dedicated to intensive forestry management. Something that we were told is impossible to do. At the conclusion of that presentation, Travis assumed the additional responsibility as our forester, coordinating all timber activities in-house when it had previously been outsourced. Duncan and Travis will take you through the transformation of Good Hope into a modern plantation utilizing best practices and abiding by the principle that every acre has a purpose. Their topics will include modern wildlife habitat and land management techniques, timber management, and utilizing the land for future alternative revenue generation ideas, such as carbon sequestration, wetlands and environmental species mitigation, and conservation easements. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Duncan and Travis.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. It's an honor. Rob never told me we'd have to do things like this when I signed up for this job. But the fact that he's so proud of us speaks volumes to him. I'm happy to do it for him. In our first ride-around interview, Rob probably doesn't remember this, but we pulled up to a giant clear cut, and he said, "What do you see here?" And I was like, "Well, it's a giant clear cut." He's like, "No, what do you mean? What can you do with this?" So I knew right then he valued my opinion of what to do with his property, the family's property, and I knew I wanted to work there. So we're going to take you through pretty much what we've changed, where we were, where we are, and where we're going tonight. This presentation will explain modern plantation management and what that means to Good Hope. Not every property is different. So we treat ours as a canvas. What artwork are we coming up with? It's not a cosmetic update. It means a fundamental shift towards integrated, data-driven, and sustainable operations. So my objective is to provide you some clarity on our operating model, confidence, and oversight and controls that align with our future. We'll go through our past, timberland, wildlife, new integrated approach of how timber and land are managed, how wildlife fits into that system, and finally what the future holds. And we'll close with time for questions and discussion. If you have questions that you need to get right away, we'll try to do our best. But we've been told we have time constraints, and Travis and I can both go down a rabbit hole. Really quick. Historically, usage was limited and concentrated, with primarily used by the senior generations for only about 10 weeks per season. Shoulder season use was minimal, and most of the acreage was underutilized. While this preserved their traditions, it actually constrained productivity and long-term flexibility. I'll repeat what Rob said. This was in my notes. When I got to Good Hope, I would ask, why do we do things this way? And I got that answer. It's the way it's always been done. I wanted that saying to die just as Rob wanted it to die, so we were on the same page with that. It's time to move on from the past. Past management and usage, the prevailing philosophy was that hunting and timber could not coexist. Less than 3,000 acres were in timber production on a place that's near 17,000 acres. Wildlife the use was pretty narrow. There were legacy duck ponds deemed inoperable. I asked why they weren't used, and the guys told me we just stopped. The flyway has moved. There's no more duck hunting. I came from a place just up the road where we were duck hunting, and I had big difference. So management decisions were somewhat siloed, and that limited both ecological and economic potential. And there are a lot of old equipment and old methods. We had to move on from that. For example, this was the dog truck where you change dogs one time during your quail hunt. I think it's a 1984 model, and it was being used when I came to work there. So how do we stay sustainable with the revenue? Historically, revenue came from guest fees, limited timber activity, and an endowment income. That narrow base created financial rigidity. I struggled with that word all night. And it didn't reflect the full potential of the property. With that, I'll turn it over to Travis and let him tell you about our new approach. He's been a key element to his mind and my mind together, and Raw's blessing. We think we got some stuff figured out.
Good evening. So like Duncan and Rob, we all did this drive around when we were hired. And Duncan drove me around, and I asked him plain as day, where do you guys run bird dogs here? The place was wild. And we needed to come up with a plan so it became less wild and more manageable for hunting and recreating. I have no idea how they did anything on their land before we started the project. So we had a tough start. We had to figure out what we had. And that's where the whole approach started. And there was a tremendous amount of just strategically talking about things. We needed an inventory because we didn't know what we had for trees. 17,000 acres, and we had no idea what we had for trees. And so the whole approach started out with strategies, an inventory, where we were going to store this information, model that information, the markets that were available to us if we were going to sell wood domestically and internationally. And the international market is pretty much what saved our bacon at Good Hope. It's been a huge part of the work we've done at Good Hope is the international wood market. And then of course on a place that big, you have special management zones, SMZs. And the SMZs, they're important to us for lots of purposes. You know, not only for the animals and for just being good stewards of the land, but they have historic and cultural interests to us all over the property. You know, we have places on the property where there's thousands of shell mounds, oyster shell mounds. Well, how'd they get there? No one really knows. There's lots of stories how they got there. But those are things that we felt were very key to the future of Good Hope. Even though those are traditions and everyone's kind of gone on us because we're changing tradition at Good Hope. No, we're just enhancing them. And that's really what we've been trying to do. And then we had to get started. So everything had to work in order, and then we got started. The next thing that we really had to change was access. You can't do anything, can't hunt, can't recreate if you don't have access to your property. And there was very little access on the property, especially for quail hunting. We would hunt in water, you know, halfway up to our knees and stuff like that. And I'm like, why are we hunting in water? You know, quail's not a duck, it's not a snipe. It likes high ground. It likes swamps. It likes the edge of swamps. So we really had to fix our access problem. And then the other thing we're going to talk about tonight too, that's changed a lot, is how we're managing for our wildlife and all the cool little things that we now do at Good Hope that we didn't do in the past. There was parts of the plantation that were kind of off limits for a while, and we've kind of changed that. Now we're telling our ownership, telling our guests, go enjoy it. We're building this for y'all, so go enjoy it. And things have come a long way. So timberland strategies. At the core of the strategy was very simple, and you've heard it already. Every acre must have a purpose. So when we went into the idea of the place, that was what got beat into my head, was find a use for every single acre on this property. That was a big goal, but we're getting close. We're getting really close. Management decisions were to be land driven by their characteristics versus tradition and the historic patterns of the past. It needs to be a multi-use property where forestry, wildlife, and recreation coexisted through intentional planning, not accidental planning. And that's important. Have a purpose, be able to identify why we're doing this to benefit both recreation and financially with our forestry operations. The big problem is we did not want to be bound by any restrictions that were our past. And so as long as our strategic vision was open, and our board was super with that, they said run, and run fast, because we want you guys getting the work done. And so once we got that from the board, it was all hands on deck, let's go make a big change. We have upset the apple cart a little bit in Ridgeland. People don't quite understand what we're doing. They see giant cutovers on the side, well, giant, a couple 100-acre cutovers on the side of 462 and 336, and wondering when the houses are coming. That is not our goal. Our goal is to lock it down as far as I'm concerned, but we needed to get rid of the stuff that was holding us back and giving us the opportunity to explore what the property was actually available to do for us. So once we come up with strategies, then it really became an inventory job, and then how to store the inventory, or how to store the information. And that was kind of where I came in and come up with a big plan to inventory the whole property. Probably walked that place 3 times, the whole place. Marking stands, collecting information, looking at satellite imagery, and then rectifying that imagery to make it work, to come up with what we had for timber, what we had for other resources, all our ponds, all the waters, drainage, that kind of stuff. So that was a big part of what we did, was the cruise, identification, stand delineation, and then our storage. And the storage, we're using a GIS, which is the Geographic Information System. Probably it's been used now forever. It's basically a database to hold geographic information. That's all it is. You can query it, you can model it. It's a wonderful tool that's usually not used on properties of this size. It's usually hundreds of thousands of acres, but it's gotten inexpensive now. So maybe even you guys use GIS or have the ability to have a GIS person here at Spring Island. But we needed it because we had no idea where we were going and what we were doing with our property. So that's, we got that rolling, put all our information into GIS. Those are stand delineations of the property. So the red line is the property line boundary, and all those little yellow lines are stand boundaries defined by associated characteristics of each of the forest types. So there's about 417,000. When I got there, there was less than 100. So everything was really broad. And we wanted to change that. We needed a closer look into what we were actually doing. Once we got the inventory done, once we found a place to store it, then we had to model it. And the modeling was in place. It allowed us to visualize the property where it was, where it is now, and different scenarios going into the future. And that's really important. I don't know if you all know, but we had a huge pulp problem happen to us this year in September when they closed the IP mill down. And the first thing that my board said is, what are we going to do now? So we sat down behind the computer for about 3 weeks, hammered out 4 different models, and said, this is what our place looks like if we grow our woods differently. We could never have done that 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And now we're able to push into the future 20 years, different scenarios, different cutting regimes, all kinds of stuff like that, and find out what our place is going to look like. And that gives reassurance to all of our guests, our ownership, our shareholders, and especially the board, that we actually have a plan. You know, we look 20 years into the future. We're starting to look 40 because of some other aspects that we're looking at, other carbon markets. We're looking at products that the forest can produce, and carbon's one of them, and it's one thing we're looking at hard. Duncan will talk about it in the future. But the modeling became very important, and it really showed us what the capabilities of the property is. It's all good to look at and go, oh, it's going to be beautiful. And it is beautiful, but is it useful? We want useful and beautiful. Doesn't happen that often, but it certainly can in forestry and in wildlife management. The whole idea that they could not coexist together makes my skin hurt. It really does. Yeah. And one thing we really found out in the modeling was the red cockaded woodpecker. We have an easement and a set-aside area on the property, and it was an area that we did no work in. So when I got there, we were out of compliance with our red woodpecker agreement. We had hardwoods that were 10 feet tall. It was a jungle. It was thick. I had 90 basal areas. So if you took all the trees and cut them and squished them together, I had 90 square feet of tree together. That's basal area, and it should be 40. So I needed to take out over half of my trees in that area to get to compliance. And the beautiful thing about red cockaded woodpecker guidelines is I think a quail wrote them. Because they're pretty much identical. And the things that red cockaded woodpecker love, so does a quail. And it was an eye-opener for our ownership, because we went to an area of 4,000 acres and turned it into Little South Georgia. And that's what it looks like now. It is a giant stand of longleaf pines with sand underneath and broom straw and all kinds of beautiful legumes. I'm not a broom straw fan, but everyone thinks it's longleaf and broom straw for quail. But its biodiversity went up 300%. We had some ladies from Georgia, a botanist and I do some work with the Longleaf Alliance, and they came out after 1 year of the cut. And they were out there the year before the cut. And we went from 5 to 6 plant species to 300 or 400 plant species on the same spot. So it was amazing. And it grew back fast. That was the biggest thing with the board was, well, how long is it going to take? I'm from Canada. I had no idea how long. So when we hunted it 2 years later, I was pretty happy. And it kind of set the stage for us for the rest of the property. And it got us in compliance, but we learned a bunch, and we made some money. So that was good. Forestry markets. We talked about it a little bit. The international market for us log-wise was huge. We actually helped with a program where they would bring containers out to the property, and we would load the containers and send a loaded container right to Savannah, put it right on the boat, and off it went. Wow. Super efficient, put more money in our pants because we had less people touching the wood. And we have a massive wood problem in South Carolina. We are the redheaded stepchild in the forestry world across the South. And I don't quite know why, but we needed to figure something out, and that's what worked for us. We sent 80% of our logs to Asia. India, Vietnam, Cambodia, mostly. China initially until the blockades, then no more China wood. It really helped us produce what we wanted to do. We had an opportunity, and it was so fluid too, because we got a call one day, and they said, "We really need hardwood." I'm like, well, we're not really cutting many hardwood stands. And then Duncan says, "We really need a freshwater pond." I said, well, I know where there's a lowland hardwood stand that is got, we've kind of used it as a pond in the past. How about we just make it more pond-like and bigger? It was an impoundment in the past, and we just expanded on it. And we now have this beautiful 160-acre impoundment, which was just for fresh water, but for some reason the ducks really like it. So every once in a while we'll sneak in there and shoot a few wood ducks on Saturday morning. But it's a beautiful feature on the property now, and at one point it was 160 acres of useless wood that was rotting and doing nothing, and now it is a very productive, wonderful place that the minute that water started filling up, the bald eagles moved in. It was like the day we closed the valve, here come 2 young bald eagles, and they've been there ever since. So it's been really cool. It's a really cool environment. The markets, you have to play the market. If you're going to be successful doing this, it takes a lot of my mental, which is not a lot, but it's enough that it makes me stay up at night thinking about where we're going to sell our wood to. So it is kind of complicated, but it's a good thing. I just wish we could get our stuff together domestically where we could deal within the country. Special management zones, like I said, they're a critical component to our strategy. They're protected and sensitive habitats, water resources, wetlands. They support a bunch of endangered, threatened species, red cockaded woodpecker, goat. We don't have gopher tortoise, but we have a gopher frog, and that's the latest and greatest that everyone wants us saving, is the gopher frog. Those guidelines were also written by Quail. So the SMZs allow us to balance the ecological priorities with our cultural, historic, recreational values, ensuring that conservation and the land we work together rather than in opposition of each other. Everything's got to kind of work together. And that was a big change for us at Good Hope. Nothing worked together at Good Hope. If forestry did this, recreation did this, and not even the recreation worked together. Like kayakers and horseback riders and hunters were very different, but we've tried really hard to make it all work under one umbrella. The access that we put in because of forestry now helps with all of our recreation. We have better hunting access. We have brand new access to a pond that everyone's going to love to fish now that we didn't have. And we showed Rob it the first time a week ago, and it's spectacular. It's a really cool place, and it was there. We just couldn't do anything with it, and now we'll be able to access it. And this is where it started. The first log truck leaving. And this, again, is a transition from our planning to actual action. With the implementation of our strategies, the access plan, the inventory, all the stuff we just covered, it really came down to putting wood on the truck for the first time. And we had lots of objections to that. Everyone wanted the place to be wild. Well, it was wild, and we couldn't find any quail on it, and we couldn't find any deer on it. They were there, but you couldn't find them. So there was a lot of education that had to go on with our shareholders and our owners as well, because they just didn't understand that a place has to evolve. It has to keep changing all the time. 5-year period now, it's been 5 years. Cleanup effort to remove all the debris and unwanted timber. effectively returning the land to a blank canvas. We're back to the blank canvas and painting our picture. The restoration revealed the property in its truest potential and created the conditions necessary for sustainable management, improved access, and future opportunities. And that's really what our whole program got us to. I mean, no one really likes that view of that cutover right there, but that's the cleanest cutover out there. And now it's full of trees. And we're pretty proud of that. We're hard on our logging crew. And if you ever have a logging crew, be hard on them. But they can do a good job. They just sometimes choose not to. They can do a good job. Again, we talked about access. It's the foundation of everything is access. Being able to enjoy the property. What you see right here, this is at the nitrogen tank corner. This was a goat path, four-wheeler path. We now call them 40-mile-an-hour roads because you can drive 40 miles an hour unless you're one of our guests, and they travel about 65 miles an hour. If you've ever seen our Suburbans, you'll know what I'm talking about. But they're a very travelable road now, and they're all weather. One thing I learned being from Canada is winter's wet. It wasn't this year, but winter can be wet. In the low country, access is an issue, and we're feeding birds every 2 weeks. We're on the ground. We need access. We need to be able to get into the woods and feed our animals, whether it's deer, turkeys, quail. You need access. And it's also, like I said earlier, it's improved our other recreation, not just the hunting. We now have access to ponds we didn't have access to. We can do a bunch of other things. So, but you had to be strategic about it. We cut all this wood. We planted all these trees. How are we going to make it easier and less expensive for the future of our cutting wood, for the next generations? And so the access plan became very, very important, because now we're looking at taking the wood out the next time. And we spent $200 grand a year on roads over the last 5 years. And now going forward, all we have to do is maintain them. And we will access every stick of wood that will be planted on Good Hope. So we're good. We're setting it up for the next generations, for their life to be a lot easier. Soon they won't need me at all, but I'm trying to make it work. You can see this was the development of a new feed trail, new road. Like that's how things have gone. Those are our hunting lanes. Good Hope never used them in the past. I don't know how you'd hunt if you didn't have those lanes, how you would ever find a bird in that. That stuff's 6 feet tall. There's no shortage of cover in the low country. So that is a really good indication. Great picture Duncan took of that road being built. That's in Hog's Neck right there. Beautiful. So our wildlife. It's why I came. The opportunity to work on 17,000 acres, produce probably potentially one of the best plantations in the Southeast. I've been all over plantations in Georgia and Alabama. They all look the same. Longleaf pines, broom straw, and the Flint River. That's what they all have in common. They're gorgeous, and they can grow quail, but they don't have the biodiversity, they don't have the diversity that we have in the low country. I don't have 5 acres that looks like another 5 acres. And I think that's really a cool thing about working at Good Hope. It's so different all over the place. I have acres that don't exist anywhere else on the property. Turkey oaks and longleaf. Like, we don't have that anywhere else. And we have a full native stand of magnolia trees in the middle of a pine forest. And then Rob saw for the first time this hidden palm forest that we have that he didn't know, and he grew up there. We just exposed it all for him. And so it's really cool what we've been able to do, and everyone's benefited. The wildlife has benefited a ton. And so I'm going to talk about quail. Our quail management was really driven by our habitat assessments, population surveys, and then you got to be able to adapt your strategies. We're consistently evaluating our program. You know, the minute I think I know what a quail is going to do, he puts the screws to me. And so I've got to change what I think he wants or she wants. It's more she wants than he wants. But they're finicky little birds, and I love them to death. I never want to shoot another one or eat another one, that is for sure. But I love watching my 11-year-old shoot them, and I love watching my guests shoot them, or at least shoot at them. But it brings me joy to see the new people out there, enjoying what I've enjoyed my whole life, and that's chasing good bird dogs and wild birds. And that's what keeps me going. I could not work at a throwdown place. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to be. I want wild birds and pre-release birds. That's what I want to do, and that's what we're developing at McLane. And it's a different place, and it takes lots of work and lots of love for them. Oh yeah, there's a little guy right there shooting. So, but those are the things that we have to really look at it. It's not just about going out there and doing whistle counts. You got to know what they want. You got to know where to put it, and then you got to change when you guessed wrong. Because really, I've read a lot about quail management, and there's a lot of theories out there. But until you get on the ground and start implementing it on your place, it changes. It really does change. I mean, I have Quail Forever telling me all the time, you cannot put a liberated bird with a wild covey of birds. I can prove to you that you can. I've seen it done a million times over the last 5 years where we've killed both a wild bird and a released bird in the same covey of birds. So it can be done, no matter what Quail Forever tells you. There's no absolute in wildlife management, and that's where we got to get to, is get rid of the absolutes. There's no absolutes. Just be open. Go find out what works for yourself, and that's what we're really trying hard to do. Technology-driven management. It plays a key role in what we're doing, just between the data storage, all of our mapping, our monitoring tools. It allows us really to precisely plan and respond to any problems that happen. The technology is that's out there now. It's unbelievable. All of our stuff is GPSed. All of our releases are monitored. We can track the birds. We can track what we're doing. All kinds of stuff. This is our north end, right on the Boyd Creek. You can see the feed trails, hunting lanes are systematically generated. They align with wildlife behavior, land characteristics. One thing we found is all of our feed trails need to be 300 yards apart. That's what we found. At first we had them 100 yards. Like, put more feed at them and they'll be good. Nope, that's not the case. And we learned that. So everything now has some data that supports what we're doing. And I thought that was very important in developing all of our wildlife stuff, is you need to be able to justify why you did it so you can make a change that makes sense, just not arbitrarily making changes because it didn't work for you. So now everything we do, we're monitoring. Like, we're even dropping locations of winter disking. So my man on the disc this winter, every time he dropped that disc, he hit his phone and it dropped a pin. So I can go back and look this summer and see what vegetation is growing up in that winter disc. And then I can track that over time because I entered them into the GIS. And so now I can go back 5 years and go, yes, Roby disked this February 22nd of 2026, and this is the vegetation that showed up there. That's very useful for us, because I don't want to buy plants and plant them on 17,000 acres. I want Mother Nature, who's already got the seed in the ground, putting it there for me. And there's lots of ways of doing that, and that's what it's allowing us to do. On to me.
I'll hit one point Travis missed his opportunity on. I've had to be somewhat of a public speaker in the community because people see our clear cuts and they're worried about development. We do all those cuts so there's not development. But what he didn't tell you is of all the trees that we cut, we planted over 1 million back. So there's more trees coming up than we've taken off the property. That's always the goal. One of the other things we changed now is recognize all species for hunting. So family usage on those shoulder seasons was nearly non-existent. Sometimes there were some dove hunts, but some of the families showed interest in deer. And with all this new access, deer hunting supports family usage, and they can come in an early quail week, early season, and deer hunt. We've had a lot of guys take part in that. Some of them help fill the kitchen because venison's on the menu. We leased 2,300 acres for some more revenue to a group of guys who still hunt. So it expands our revenue stream again. The goal is to find more things to do to fill the calendar and enjoy their time while they're there. Ducks, like I said earlier, the flyways move, there's no more ducks here. Well, I convinced them, the board, to allow me to build 2 agricultural ponds to go with our legacy salt brackish water ponds. We plant corn, rice, millet, flood, fresh water, and these areas now support family use, blind leasing. We lease out some years 4, some years 5 blinds to some locals. It turned a previously inoperable area into now an asset. It produces fairly decent revenue for us. You know, the ducks still have to show up. Can't control that. And doves. We have 3 dove fields that we decided we put high fences around because of the deer density. It's next to impossible to grow sunflowers or corn. We manage them on a rotation to allow rest and recovery. That improves our consistency throughout the year. My goal is for the first reserve hunting week to be, or the last reserve hunting week to be just as good as the first one, consistency. The early season shoots in these dove fields the last 2 years have resulted in limits or the shooters run out of shells. So we've had pretty good luck. They always count their success on how many they killed. I count their shells. I have a little clicker. Can't get me on that one. And then turkeys. When I got there was some interest in turkeys, but I've been in the turkey hunting business or enjoyment for most of my life, and it's the best population of the eastern wild turkey I've seen. I don't have an answer why, but since we've opened up the woods more, we see them even more. Again, access. You can see what's there. They can hear you calling. You have to be able to get to them. Our turkey population is thriving, and the family, I actually have a father and 2 sons there now, family members who we're hunting tomorrow morning. So this will be their first time ever going, so it ought to be interesting. One thing I introduced, some of you are familiar with this, but I said we have snipe in these duck ponds as we draw the water down. Let's go shoot snipe. Well, the reaction was, you're not getting me with that prank. Some of you might know about, if you drop someone off at a ditch with a paper sack or something and say, just wait on the snipe, and then you just leave them. Anyway, snipe's new addition, and it enhances our guest experience. We do driven hunts, and by driven, I mean Travis and I and our Labradors walk out there in the mud and muck, and they stand on spots and shoot their guns hot. We showed it to them, and now we have guests actually planning their visit around snipe season. So, lots of shots fired. 186 on one hunt to be exact. And then there's fishing. Travis mentioned some fishing. The legacy ponds, 2 of them are set. I have them set to where they take on new saltwater each high tide if it gets higher on the outside than the inside. The family wasn't aware that this was an option. It was kind of a hidden thing by previous management. Well, I found these ponds and I'm like, "Did you guys know about this?" No, they didn't know. So I said, "Let me show you." And as you can see, redfish, spotted sea trout, flounder, and then one picture of the big brim out of the freshwater pond, the big bluegill. So it's just another opportunity to fill your time while you're there. I didn't have a picture of a bass yet, but they're in there. It's a big pond. And birding. Birding's a new opportunity. Always been there. Again, access. I know Andy and those came over looking for hawk and sparrow. They are there. But it's an all-season thing for guests to do. I welcome it. I think it's a great thing. I see painted buntings all the time, and I just wish someone was there with me to see all the things that I get to see. So all this leads to plans for the future. How do we sustain find revenue streams for modern financial planning? So what can we do? A full guest calendar. You know, they pay for their usage. Even though they're shareholders, owners of the place, they still pay to play, if you want to call it that. Our quail week has 17, our quail calendar has 17 available weeks. Well, our goal is to fill those weeks. How do we do that? Offer all these other things. Make it interesting. We're looking at the potential of the carbon market. At first, we were all a little leery of that. I've been highly educated over the past year, and I think it's a good thing. How long it'll last, we'll see. But it aligns with our timber plan, as Travis said, very closely. We have already planted longleaf pines for pine straw production. We'll have to wait a few years on that, but we spaced them just right for equipment to get in between. We don't want our revenue in one basket. You know, how many things can we pull out of the basket? You know, and then environmental species mitigation. What can we protect? What will we, tax benefits of protecting species, just like the RCW, the red cockaded woodpecker. What else is out there? How do we continue painting that sustainable picture? We need financial resilience for the future, but it's nature's canvas. What do we paint on there? So that's our question, and that's our goal, and that's our objective Travis and I have been given by the board. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Have you thought about any other agricultural products, cotton or rice or anything of that nature beyond just timber and recreation?
There's been agricultural farming on the place before. The deer density caused such a problem that it's out of the question. The only rice I do is for ducks. So.
What's your involvement with carbon management? How does it work?
We're just investigating. We've had discussions with 2 different companies. We're doing analysis, getting all our numbers back.
What would that look like if you went forward with something? What would contribute to that?
So, once our carbon threshold would be identified by the groups, that will basically issue the carbon credit.
Okay.
They'll look at our inventory, which is another great reason to have a very accurate inventory. Is I just sent off our latest carbon information to an outfit that wants to look at our carbon opportunities on the property, and basically click a button, send it to them, and they go, "Oh man, we've got like here, this stand holds this trees at this density at this age." They can go through all 400 whatever stands and come up with that, as well as they're using remote sensing with the satellite image to pull a lot of data as well. But now they actually have real data to to really look at the information that they're gathering. So they'll give us a threshold number, and then it would be our response, they'll buy our credits, and then it'll be our responsibility to keep within the threshold that they would allow us. And that's important, and we think it's a great idea if it actually works that way. The one model we have right now with them, with one outfit from Missouri is it matches my forestry model really well. The one minus pulp. With the pulp market taken away from me here in September, I kind of had to remodel the forest. And with that modeling, it really is very close to what I want to cut on a yearly basis anyways. So when they align that close, I don't need to change what we're doing, which made everyone on the board very happy, made me think my model was pretty tight, which was great. So that's kind of where we're at. We're really scratching the surface, just scratching the surface now. But it's a forest product, and we need to look at it for the future. It would definitely fill the gap if the money is actually real. It would fill the gap in needs that we have on the plantation.
Just to supplement that, Mike, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now, the carbon markets, because there's the California market, the regulated market, and then there's the voluntary market. It is a forest product, and if it dovetails with your thinking about what's my annual allowable cut on my land going to be, if that keeps you within the threshold he was describing, then in effect it's just another forestry product. And remember, since we're doing regeneration all the time and planting new trees, your carbon inventory will go in sort of a curve. It'll go down as you're harvesting some trees, and as your newer trees are getting to maturity and starting to build up carbon storage, it'll come back up. So if it dovetails with our long-term forest health, then it could be a win-win. But it's a wild market.
They actually, everyone thinks carbon market, you don't cut your trees, you just let them grow. But their plan actually called for us to cut more trees than our current plan. You cut your growth. Yes, sir.
You mentioned you're growing longleaf for straw production. Are you finding that the timber market's changed in such a way that you can make it profitable longleaf for timber? Or is the growth rate too slow?
We actually, well, the growth rate's pretty slow, but only on the end, maybe 9 years difference will mature, maybe.
The reality is there is a huge misconception on longleaf that it's slow and it takes forever. The biggest thing about a longleaf is it can grow for a longer period of time than a lawwall. It can grow for hundreds of years. Lawwall, it can grow for 35, 45, and then it's going to fall down. Not necessarily, but it's done growing. The difference is how fast you can get it out of the grass phase, which is the blue, when everything's blue now. If you can get it out of the grass quickly, then you're ahead of the game. The problem is it can sit in the grass phase for 5 to 10 years and do nothing, and everyone goes, oh, these stupid trees, they never grow, and that's what everyone says about it. But if you burn them, and you burn them hard through there and get the competition, we have longleaf that we planted 5 years ago, that's 10 feet tall. It has competed side by side on the proper site as our lawwalls. And that's the key. It's site specific and you have to manage it. You know, they used to have intensive forest management at Good Hope. That meant we plant it, we thin it, we cut it, we plant it, we thin it, we cut it. That was intensive forest management at Good Hope. There's nothing intensive in that. The intensity now is the work that's going on while the trees are growing. You know, the burning, all the other stuff that has to go on. So I am of the belief that you can plant longleaf and have a benefit as a wood product almost the same time as lawwood. You're not going to get the thinning benefits, but at 35 years, you're going to be pretty close to the same volume.
The ones we have planted specific to pine straw were in a couple of ag fields that we don't use. We weren't doing ag and might as well plant something that'll produce. And that's the idea.
One more question, and then we probably have to wrap up.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen from all your management practices for quail an increase in your wild quail population? And are you managing to continue to increase that?
We see a huge increase in our wild birds.
Sign me up.
Our numbers have changed. So our release We have not changed the number of release sites that we pre-release birds since I've really started. We've added 4,000 acres of huntable land. Our hunting has never been as good as it is at Good Hope right now. I heard stories before I got there of a 3-hour hunt having 1 or 2 coveys of quail. We're moving 4 to 5 coveys an hour. You know, when things are right. But there's gonna come a time where we're gonna have to make a decision, or not. But there's gonna come a time. Are we gonna be a wild bird only, or are we gonna keep doing what we're gonna do? We're running some pretty good experiments this year on part of the plantation to see how viable that is gonna be as an option. Because I would hate, we've been having these great 6 years and then all of a sudden I go to Rob and say, well, we're gonna go all wild birds, and they come out and our covey numbers are half of what they were the year before. That won't go over very well.
We're not burning the course this year, one of our courses. We're gonna feed it all season, all summer. And we're gonna see what we count towards the fall.
Wild bird only area, probably 1,200, 1,500 acres on a peninsula surrounded by water except one side. So it'll be interesting to see.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.